Hi, I'm Polly Jean Harrison. We're here at Money 2020 in Las Vegas. Would you like to introduce yourself for us?
Of course, Polly. Thank you so much. My name is Chris Briggs, and I am the Senior Vice President of Identity for Mitek Systems.
So, how are you finding the conference so far?
Conference so far is pretty good. There are a lot of new companies that are here and sort of some of the older technologies that are here as well. So I think that the conference is really coming back from previous years where due to pandemic situations, you haven't seen as many players and people in the space. It's also a way for us to be able to talk about some of the new products that we have up and coming, like a product that we launched today, which is called MyPass, a multimodal authentication, biometric authentication platform.
Amazing. So I'd love to ask you about that, because I know when we think about new technology, a lot of the time people are so wary about using it, especially when we think about sort of the generic consumer. Something new comes along and there's a lot of wariness about it. And especially when we think of biometrics, the idea of giving away your face or your fingerprints or your data. How are we getting around that? And I know with your new solution, that's kind of wrapped up in that too.
Yeah, and it is scary for many people. There's no way you can get around that, right? In the space that we live in today, there are lots of things you have. You have a driver's license, or you have a specific document that you're using to be able to do something, or a credit card. But at the end of the day, your face is your face, or your fingerprints are your fingerprints. And when you don't have that, or you feel like you lose it, then it becomes scary. The fact of the matter is that we're not giving them away when we use biometric platforms like MyPass. Basically, what you're doing is you're actually giving someone consent. You're loaning it to someone so that they can actually help you move through a process easier. So for example, you come into a bank, you want the bank to know who you are. You basically have the ability to be able to use that over and over and over again so that you don't have to have a password, because let's be honest, passwords are hard to remember. Everybody puts them on a list, and at the end of the day, you probably use the same password for every site that you're going into. I know people like that, don't you?
Every single one.
Yeah, for sure.
I have 3 that I rotate actually, so I'm not terrible.
So the one that's like high security and low security.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is you have 3 passwords, right? And then every once in a while you log on and your browser tells you, hey, your password needs to be changed because it's been compromised. Herein lies another one of the problems. That in fact, passwords can be stolen. If properly curated, biometrics can't. There's no way that you can't say that all data is secure in all situations. So I'm not really saying that it is a perfect system, but it's far easier and far less friction for a consumer as they're going through a process as when they're actually using a password. And remembering it is always a pain, changing it and whatnot.
I guess you never have to remember your face. It's just always there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's right there, right? My face or my voice. And that's one of the things that I think is important is it's not just about one. Really to get successful at using this as an effective way to be able to manage the process is to use multiple forms of checking as you're going through one of these processes. So I use the word multimodal. We talk about this concept of using your face and your voice, and not just alone, but together. And then not only are you checking that you have the face and the voice, but you're also biometrically binding those and checking for liveness as well. So I know that it's not spoofed because it's not a picture. I know that you're actually on the other side of the phone. I know it's you because I've been able to take the biometrically bound object that basically gets created, and then I can associate that with a driver's license or a passport or something else, which almost assuredly creates something that proves your identity beyond a doubt.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned spoofing there. How are we kind of keeping things secure on that front? Because I've seen some people on TikTok and stuff, and it's so realistic.
Very.
How do you combat that? How do you keep things secure?
Yeah, so there are a couple of ways. First of all, we realize that spoofing exists, and so we haven't stuck our heads in the sand trying to avoid it as an inevitable part of how people are trying to take over accounts. So ATO has gone through the roof because there are lots of people that are actually using different types of technology to be able to copy and or spoof, right? So we test that, and you can see our technology on display where we will use masks and we will use other types of specific tests as part of a process of ensuring, in fact, that it is live. So liveness is a key component of proving out that it's not spoofed and that it is something real. And then the biometrically binding it to one transaction to the next, combined with that liveness, is the way to be able to overcome the issues that you typically see with fakes or spoofing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so thinking about businesses then, when are businesses when should they be implementing these sort of passwordless security measures?
Yeah, so other than now, right? One of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace is the rapid change of regulations and standards is very difficult for our customers to keep up with. So there is a new rule about privacy and or consent that comes out almost every single day worldwide. And we keep up with those things. So we basically track exactly how those are being managed from a government perspective or a standards perspective, and we impart that knowledge onto our customers. Most of our customers can't do that themselves. So when you are one of our clients or prospective clients that's thinking, maybe I need to do this now, a lot of it is around exactly that. The fact that I can't keep up with what's going on in the marketplace, and there are too many regulations for me to know. I don't have the ability to be able to communicate consent language with the consumer. I don't want to keep the type of information that many organizations consider to be highly sensitive in a way that's not compliant with those regulations. And then on top of that, in many cases, what we're seeing is this type of technology has become far more easier to implement and far less expensive to implement. And so we are seeing many organizations to turn from trying to do it themselves because they can't keep up, it's too expensive for them to do it themselves, to us to help them go through that process on their behalf. And last but not least, we have a platform that allows it to be able to be sort of this no-code, low-code, to use some fancy terms, integration into what they're doing so that they don't have to re-engineer everything that they're doing today.
Is there any sort of way for a business to know when they're ready to take on that biometric journey?
Yeah, it's a really good question because I think there's a spectrum of companies that are saying, yes, we're doing this, and no, we're not. And I've seen it sort of split down the middle 50-50. Many are starting to go down that process. A lot of it is highly dependent upon what they see as the future of their interaction with the consumers. So I talked about regulations, but if you think about today's economic climate, there are two other major drivers. The first is profitability. Companies are worried about making money, meeting their margins and helping to continue to grow in an uncertain economic climate. If you combine that with wanting to have a frictionless customer experience or having consumers work with them very easily, those are the types of companies and those are the types of situations where I'm thinking through, how do I keep up with the regulations? I can't. How do I make sure that the consumer experience is effective? I don't make them change their passwords all the time. I know who they are. And last but not least, I want to do it so that I can maintain a certain level of costs and profitability inside my organization. If you think about that juxtaposed to what we're talking about, this is the time that we're seeing companies start to turn to technologies like ours to be able to tackle all three of those vectors in the marketplace.
Absolutely. And I guess following on from that, what should a company be looking for when they're looking to pick an identity provider?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think that what many of the providers have is a certain level of quality and veracity of being able to determine that a person is who they say that they are. There are lots of different technologies that can be used to do that. So you can look at identity verification, you could use it biometrics. What we typically recommend is this multimodal approach. Don't just use one. Use more than one way of being able to look at a consumer and being able to look at multiple vectors for how the consumer is coming into different channels within your organization. The other is somebody that can support you at an enterprise grade level. So think about organizations that have experience in not only proving out the technology from a quality perspective, but also measuring the data governance behind how models are created and deployed to be able to support that, and then also being able to help you navigate this regulatory framework so that when you get a question from a governmental regulatory body around how you might have determined whether Chris is who he says he is, that you can effectively answer that question. And in many cases, you're going to have to rely on a third party to help you through that process. Companies like Mitek do that every single day.
I mean, let's talk about Mitek. Obviously, the market is huge at the moment. It always is. Why are companies choosing Mitek? What is it about your company that is so
funny,
good?
and it always is, and it's becoming more and more competitive on a day-to-day basis. There are many companies that are coming into the space. Many of our clients, current and prospective customers, are looking for organizations like ours because we have a history in this space. For many of the people that may or may not know, we pioneered the technology in and around check deposits. We have leveraged similar technology to be able to use digital capture for identity documents, for your face, for your voice. In other words, we have a really deep and wide experience in this space. And we also understand what it means to be working with some of the largest customers in the United States and outside the United States, big banks that have very big concerns around how their systems run, being uptime, whether they're not they're meeting the security standards that are required locally or from a broader perspective. And then last but not least, the idea of keeping an ethical view of consumer privacy at the heart of the entire transaction. We understand that. We take that to heart. We build our systems and we build our products to be used by these companies to be able to satisfy those requirements every single day.
Amazing. Sounds fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to chat.
It was very nice chatting you today. I appreciate it.
No problem.